Hi, very good afternoon to you. It's Jim from maverickstar. Well, this is what you've all been waiting for. As usual, for the second time in the month, we will do the latest magnetic pole position for you. And you may note straight away that there is a green pin on the map, and that is because the magnetic North Pole has retreated easterly by 2.1 miles. And you may note also that this is the second time this year it has done that. The last time we'd done the magnetic pole positioning at the beginning of the month, it was around the same position as it was before, so it had come to a halt, and now we're seeing it do exactly what it did in January, February this year. If you go back in the archive, you'll see that it's done the exact same thing. One thing we have noticed, and we'll cover this in a video tomorrow, is that every day there's a slight wobble as it makes these circular movements throughout the month. One thing we've noticed is that the circular movements are starting to get bigger. We went back and we checked the data from January. It was doing the exact same thing with the slightly larger circular movements. You know, you're not going to get this information anywhere else. I can guarantee you that. That's why, you know, this information is so special. You know, we've got the only trimag in the world. We built it ourselves. It took 2 years to develop it, and you know, that in itself I believe warrants a little bit of support from, you know, you guys, the general public, because mainstream organisations that have the millions and millions of pounds of funding and resources are not sharing this information with you. This is a real rare anomaly. I can't empathise that any more than what I do. You know, we now do this twice a month for you guys, so that you can see almost real time what's happening, and if there are big changes, we'll notify you as and when they take place. But this is big in itself. You know, when we see for the first time in, you know, the 10 years that we've been researching, you know, the magnetic North Pole migration across the northern hemisphere, you know, for the first time in 10 years that we've been doing the research on that, we've seen the magnetic North Pole behave unusual for the first time in 120 years. And it's done it twice in 1 year. And then you add to the fact that we've passed that mark of 40 degrees, which we anticipated, you know, we would start to see unusual behaviour, you know, nearly 2.5 years in advance. And we still get criticised today because the pole hasn't done its complete reversal like we anticipated. We could see, we never said it would happen, but we said we could see some activity, and by God, we was absolutely right on that. And I don't think we get enough credit for that. We was absolutely slap bang on the money. You know, we are starting to see now for the second time unusual behaviour with the magnetic North Pole. So if we go back to January, when we saw this behaviour happen, what happened after that? Well, it started to progress westerly again, didn't it, when it picked up? Only when it started to progress westerly, it moved at an increased speed. And because it did it the first time, doesn't mean that it's going to behave the same the second time. We have to wait and see. And that's why, you know, right now, here at the observatory, I'm sitting on the edge of my chair because I am so excited to see what happens next. Have we got to that point where the magnetic North Pole now will migrate much faster? We know we're in the hot zone right now. This is where we really will start to see, I believe, some major activity. And by God, for the second time this year, we've seen it go backwards easterly. And that is the second time in 120 years during this magnetic reversal it has behaved like this. So there you are in a nutshell. As usual, I'll read the latitude and longitude. If you're following it on your own Google Maps, you can pin it. That is 180 degrees by 53 hours, 20 minutes and 43 seconds north. The longitude is 14 degrees, 55 hours, 58 minutes by 84 seconds east. I'm going to stop the video briefly. I'm going to restart it so we can pull out and see exactly where we are in relationship to all those other pin marks. So like I said, we're going to back out the image so that you can see, you know, back in February there was another green pin mark, and that was where, you know, this behaviour that we're witnessing right now happened again. And then we'll just back it out all the way so you can see in relationship to all the other pin marks in that corridor of the white and yellow line as it's been progressing, you know, ever since the pole migrated back, or begin to migrate back in, you know, the early 19th century, you know, over 120 years ago, like we say. You know, this, without a doubt, is happening. You know, it's something that the mainstream organisation doesn't deny, and we know exactly at this point where it's heading, and that is Central Russia. The reason for that is because when we look at the high intensities over the northern hemisphere, there is two. What's not normally mentioned in mainstream releases that we actually have two magnetic poles, and because we have two over the northern hemisphere, one being in Canada, which is weakening, the other one being in Russia, which is increasing, the dipole, or what your compass points to, is actually at neither the one in Canada or the one in Russia. It's pointing to the one in the middle. And you could set up this experiment like we have done before with the magnetic viewing film. You might recall the video that we done on that, where we got two magnets and we put the compass in between the two that was equally distanced from the compass, and what happened was the compass neither pointed at either magnet, it pointed in between. Now in that experiment we backed off the one that we would say was Canada, which would indicate, you know, a weakening intensity, which is exactly what's happening over our northern hemisphere. So it's a good analogy, or an experiment that represents almost what's happening. And we backed off the magnet, and what we saw was the compass needle head further towards the one in Russia. If we backed off the one that represents Canada all the way, then, you know, the compass needle would only point at the magnet that was representing Russia at that time. Why mainstream media and these organisations haven't done simplified experiments like that, or recreations of, you know, experiments that show what's happening over the northern hemisphere, is way beyond me. Why don't they do that? Why don't they first of all tell people that we have two dipoles? Sorry, we have two magnetic intensities, or two magnetic poles over the northern hemisphere, and two over the southern hemisphere. Only one of them in the east is very weak compared to the one in the west on the southern hemisphere. Why aren't these things being discussed in mainstream media? And why isn't there more interest by mainstream media on this topic? Because, you know, it's so rare. I can't believe it sometimes. You know, I still talk to people that have no idea, can you believe that the earth is going through a magnetic reversal. And when you start to talk about this with them, they're really interested, and they want to know everything. But why the mainstream media doesn't share this information, which is obviously interesting to the general public because of its rarity, they just simply don't. It's insane. You know, we live in very peculiar times right now, guys. Anyhow, as promised, there's your latest magnetic North Pole position for you. We'll do the same again at the beginning of next month. But please realise, you know, the importance of the information that you get from our observatory. You're not going to get this information anywhere else, and we are copying, you know, attacks from every angle right now, and we need more support now than we ever have done because of current you know, circumstances. with, you know, the economic climate around the world, you know, has meant that we get less funding now than we ever have done. And I would love to see that change. So there is a link down there, guys. Genuinely, if you want to keep information coming like today, then you have to start thinking about whether you want to support it or not. And that is why I've left it. I know a lot of people don't like to hear it. That's why I left it to the end of the video to mention the link down below. So, only other thing to say is what I usually do. Please consider, you know, supporting what we do. Take a little bit of time to appreciate, you know, the rarity of this information at this point in time. And if you want to keep it coming, there's a link down there. It does require a little bit of effort on your behalf to fill out that form. I know it is a ball ache, it really is, but that's the only way we can get a little bit of funding to keep things going here. Anyhow, you guys have an amazing day. I'll catch up with you in the coming days, and as always, you know, you take care of your loved ones. So we usually do. Bye for now.